So this is really the first time I'm doing something like this on the channel, and really it was a bit of an opportunistic move as I had some access to some really old graphics cards and a spare PC to use, so I thought why not, let's give it a shot and check out some of the hardware that I didn't get to use when I was younger. So I checked out a local CEX store near me and found they had an Asus GTX670 2GB Kepler GPU and thought, you know, why not, let's see what it can do. It cost me £25, which I thought was a steal considering the performance I did manage to get out of this card, and although the Kepler architecture had a seemingly rocky past, though its increase in power efficiency over the 500 series cards was not to really be sniffed at, I must say I was somewhat impressed with what I saw when testing this card on some more modern titles. So the 670 came out way back in 2012, making it a 12-year-old card this year. It was released at around £399 here in the UK, which back then was probably pretty decent considering the prices of the 4070s on the market these days. It has 1,344 CUDA cores and 2GB of VRAM on my model, although there is a 4GB variant available as well. Well, I say available, maybe you get one on eBay or secondhand somewhere. It supports DirectX 12, though because driver support has stopped for this card, some more modern titles like Helldivers 2, Warhammer, Darktide, and the latest F1 2024 game did not run for me. They didn't even launch. So there is that to consider if you're after a super budget graphics card. The latest driver I have from Nvidia that I found on their website is 472.12 Windows 10 to 11 driver. Whether there's a newer driver out there, I'm not sure, but this is what Nvidia's search function spat back at me. The PC I am using for testing purposes has a Ryzen 5 5600X processor to minimize those bottlenecks with the graphics card as much as possible, with 16GB of RAM, and it's using a terabyte M.2 drive as storage for the games. So how did the GTX 670 perform? Let's take a look now. So starting in alphabetical order, Apex Legends seemed to perform pretty well, hitting a nice solid 60 FPS and sometimes even exceeding that kind of frame rate through most of my testing. The game's resolution was set to 1080p and everything else was set to a mixture of low and medium settings with a 2x anisotropic filtering, and for a GPU that came out in 2012, this was definitely a good start. Battlefield 5 also fared well with a 1080p resolution and a max fidelity quality, meaning that everything was set to a medium graphics preset essentially. The game is a bit older now, coming out in 2018, so this 670 would still have been a contender in people's gaming rigs, I'm sure. So I wasn't too surprised that it could run. Unfortunately, because of the new anti-cheat version EA use, I couldn't run Afterburner to give you stats on the screen, but as you can see, the game played relatively smoothly and did look quite nice actually. Counterstrike 2, again playing at 1080p, felt quite smooth, and although this game probably has to be one of the most optimized games on the planet at this stage, I didn't feel like it was struggling at all. Of course, I was playing against bots, don't judge me, I'm not very good at Counter-Strike, but I was hitting frame rates well into the hundreds with this card. So why not try Cyberpunk 2077, right? I had to give it a try at least. And to be honest with you, it didn't look great, I must admit. The graphics quality was very hazy, especially when it came to straight lines and edges, and it looks pretty flat even at nighttime, but I did still manage to pull off an average of 33 frames per second, which for a game like this and its rocky past and also quite demanding graphics settings, I thought it was pretty good. I ran the game at 720p with a mixture of medium and low settings within the graphics presets, and it was at least playable if you wanted to dive in, but it just didn't look great at all. So Fallout 4, because it's such a hot commodity right now due to the show being released on Amazon Prime, it was a smooth experience to say the least, hitting an average frame rate of 60. Now this, I'm not really sure was a true frame rate as it was locked the entire time, but from what I did experience from both running around the wasteland and in combat, I didn't feel like this game really slowed down at all. I was hitting a 1080p resolution with the high graphics preset and 16x anisotropic filtering and also TAA anti-aliasing. It's an older game now, so I didn't have any worries it wouldn't run, but it still ran great on this card. Fortnite to me was a bit of an odd one because I thought it would be a lot easier to run than I actually found. It did run at a 1080p resolution on a medium preset across the board, and it did run fine, but it didn't look super sharp, and if I tried to push the game further, the frame rate significantly dropped. At times though, I will say I was hitting above 100 FPS, and during combat it was closer to the 70s, which I thought was a pretty decent range to actually sit in. And to be honest with you, this game was way more than playable as well. Overwatch at 1080p medium settings brought back an average FPS of 120 to 130, which was absolutely great to see, and I know it's not the most graphically demanding game to play, but the ability to play a popular esports title like this, and a personal favourite of mine I must say, was wonderful to see, being able to do it on such a budget graphics card like the 670. And finally, Tekken 8 was a bit of an odd one. It was a very odd experience and something a bit more akin to what I found when I did my Steam Deck video testing. The game, when launched, told me I needed to run the latest drivers from Nvidia or switch to a different rendering APU, something I of course had already done at the time of testing for the 670, but ignoring that message and jumping into some gameplay, depending on the arena I was fighting in, the game just really tanked when it came to frame rate, especially in the hangar arena and in the UFC fighting ring. Not sure on the exact names, but yeah, they were a real pain to run. If I changed the arena though to the Roman Colosseum for example, the game hit the 60 FPS target I was going for. I was running it at 1080p and tested at 720p and also messed around with the graphics presets as well, and nothing fixed this issue. Ubisoft's new arena shooter XDefiant has the option to lock your FPS at 60, which is the highest it goes, and at 1080p with everything set to a mixture of medium and low settings, the game held its own, even though I am not great at the new shooter. It's smooth enough to play competitively, and as long as those graphics settings are kept to a minimum, the game doesn't seem to be extremely demanding on lesser hardware, which is nice to see. So how did you think it performed? Were you surprised with the results, or were they pretty much expected for a 12-year-old card? Let us know in the comments down below. And as this is the first time we've done this video, let us know which games you would like to see on future graphics card testing. We got a few old cards in the other room at the moment that we are going to be putting to the test, so let us know if there's any particular games you would like to see being tested on this graphics card as well. And also let us know in the comments if you're using a budget graphics card as well. It will be so interesting to see how many people out there are actually sticking to their guns and not upgrading at the moment. In my main PC, or my main gaming rig should I say, I do have a 4070 Ti, which is pretty much overkill because I play a lot of Overwatch, so I should have just saved my money, spent £25 and got one of these cards just so I can play some Overwatch, but there we go, that's hindsight for you. If you are using an older GPU, let us know which GPU you're using in the comments. We'd love to hear from you and your gaming experiences with those older cards. Thank you, as I say, very much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.